Hi, Marilyn. How are you?
Good, Richard. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for agreeing to be interviewed today. As I mentioned to you before, the goal of this is really to amplify the voices of amazing leaders in the education space. And so I'd like to start off by having you introduce yourself.
Sure. So my name is Marilyn Valdes, and I have been in the Department of Education since March of '99, so going into my 23rd year. I started off as a bilingual special ed teacher for 10 years in all the different settings, from general education to what's now considered sets, but at that time was called resource room,
Mhm.
to ICT, to self-contained classes. So I had a breadth of experience from kindergarten through junior high for classes, and then I went to Bank Street, got my leadership degree, and then have spent the last 12, 13 years since then in positions of leadership in a variety of positions. I've been a director of special education in charter schools and middle schools and high schools. And I was a committee on preschool special educator committee on preschool special ed administrator for 3 years. And until I moved to this position that I'm currently in, I am now a mental health and wellness administrator with the Department of Ed's Division of Early Childhood Education. So the last 6, 7 years have been more preschool focused. And while this current position isn't as focused on special education as my prior years, I still, of course, carry that interest and am always looking to support all the communities that work with our children with differing abilities and different needs.
Yeah, well, thank you. As I mentioned to you, sort of on our pre-call, I am the parent of a child with special needs, and I have been fortunate enough to be able to understand the process to navigate getting him the services that he needs, but it certainly hasn't been easy, even with all of my knowledge. And so, one of the things I'm hoping that our audience today can get from you is just how to best position themselves to get what their students and children need. But before we
Mhm.
do all that, the pandemic has hit all of us hard. Um, and even, in places that have the most supports and access to resources have struggled, right? And so
Mhm.
given, all the disruption that our students have faced during the pandemic, and people are rightfully putting an increased focus on social emotional learning, but also are trying to figure out how to balance the critical academic needs and supporting their students' mental health. And so, given your role and extensive experience, what should educators be sort of attending to during this time?
Mm. Definitely the social emotional needs are primary, because if everybody, we the teachers, we the administrators, we the children families are are not are not okay, then it's going to be hard for our children to succeed. And so I think there is an understanding that that's a priority, but what that actually looks like can be hard to pinpoint, because social emotional health can look different for different people, and
Yeah,
the
yeah,
needs can look differently. So,
yeah,
but definitely we need to be okay. That's the main thing. We need
yeah,
to be okay.
yeah. And if you were to reimagine sort of the way we do, special education, or meet the needs of students who learned differently, what would you do differently? Where would you start?
I always think that in terms of education, schools need to be safe, nurturing, predictable, similar to the way our homes should be.
Hmm.
And we know, so for many reasons, sometimes homes can't be for a certain time period safe, nurturing, predictable. And that's where it's even more important for our children to have that at school.
Hmm.
Um, So because the school is like the second home for the child. So I think the focus needs to be on that. Everybody in the community needs to really get to know each child, get to understand them. Each child is unique. Um, they may be classified a certain way according to an IEP. They may be in a certain setting, but even in those classifications, in those settings, every child is unique. And we need to understand every child's story, where they're coming from, so that we can then better understand how to address their needs, so that then we can educate them.
Yeah. Now, the country's facing severe staffing shortages when it comes to both teaching staff, and administrators. And so you mentioned the critical need to get to know each student individually and address their learning needs as an individual sort of exercise, knowing that each child is different, the rate of growth is different, their access to material may be different. What advice do you have for district leaders or school administrators who are facing this real challenge of teacher shortages with being able to do exactly what you just said, which is to get to know each of the students intimately?
Well, I think teacher retention is really important. It's true. I actually right now in my position, I supervise social workers, and I'm in almost every conversation I ask them, how is teacher retention at those schools?
Yeah.
And we need to, school administrators, district administrators, we need to think about the people that we currently have. How are they? Are they okay? Because a lot of people are not okay. So we need to help them to make sure that they're okay, and then find and tap into what gets them up every morning and into schools, because schools are hard places. It's the rewards are great in teaching, but sometimes the rewards aren't enough. That the smile from the child or that hug, it's sometimes it's not enough, and people need more. But if a supervisor, if a leader is also showing the teachers, the people who are there, the paras, everybody who's on the front line working with the kids, if they're showing appreciation, that's going to go a long way as well to keeping more people in the profession and keeping people excited, because we need these professionals to then bring more people on. We need people to say, yes, children need you. You need to come in and teach. So I think we need to think about that teacher retention, but it's also to make that happen, it's about the connections, because of course, more money would help, more incentives would help, but people who go into this profession, they really care. We need to make sure they're being cared for.
Right. Yeah. And there's so much talk now about, the urgent need, which is true, to reimagine what schooling looks like given the pandemic and all of what we've learned about the way adults learn, the way students learn, that we sometimes forget that there are a lot of good things that are working currently. What are some of the things you believe are working as it relates to either special education or just education at large?
I think people who are coming into the profession, for the most part, really do care, have a passion. There's a reason why they came in here. Most people do not come in here just because of the paycheck or the fame. A lot of people are coming
Definitely not why we become educators.
No, not at all. So I think there's that. There's the people are willing to go above and beyond, especially during this time, during the pandemic. It's been so difficult to be an educator, where people had to pivot literally from one day to the next, going into remote teaching. People had to build their skills, and people did it because they care about the children. So that is working, and we need to continue to acknowledge that and shout people out for that. I think it's working also that leaders, even though it's controversial about whether we should be remote or in person, but leaders are really holding the entire school community to think about what's going to be best to help our children grow and succeed. And that means being in person.
Mhm.
That means being there for the families that need schools open so that they can then go to work. So, you know, I also think it would be great to have some remote options for some families who have identified that that helps. But I think those are some of the things that have been working. People have really stepped up,
Yeah.
and it's amazing. It's incredible.
Yeah. One thing that you mentioned earlier was this idea of just meeting the needs of the community, meeting the needs of individual students, and also meeting the needs of teachers at this time. How, which kind of brings this idea up of differentiation, especially when it comes to the way we teach and what we teach to our students who are sort of learning diverse. What advice would you give someone who is trying to figure out how to teach teachers to differentiate instruction for their students?
Advice on how to teach teachers. It starts again with getting to know them as human beings. You know, each of us has an expertise, but it's not going to be received if the person you are trying to give it to is not ready to receive it. So you need to find out, where are they? What do they feel they need? You may identify that they need something, they need this kind of workshop, that kind of, but you really need to get to know them as leaders, or as teachers, as a community. What's first and foremost in their minds?
Right.
You know, what are they thinking about when they think about their kids? And then you can start from there, and then you can say, all right, so let me see how I can use this content to help address what they're really looking for.
Yeah. And, you know, you've spent now over 2 decades in this space. Last but really important question, what to you does it mean to be educated?
To be educated?
Yes.
I think everybody is educated. Everybody. I mean, starting from, you know, the smallest child who's a week old has been educated. So it's just that it looks different. It looks different for different people. So, you know, I think about there was a time when I felt very strongly like, okay, the goal is for everyone to get through college, or to have some kind of trade, and now I feel that the goal is for everyone to be happy. Everyone should be happy and fulfilled and loved and appreciated for who they are as they are.
Hmm.
And I think we've been working as a world community to get there a little bit more. And I feel like the work that the Department of Ed has been doing to, for example, dismantle racism and let's talk more about equity, like, we're getting there. We're getting to understand that we need to look at everybody for who they are and not just assume this is what education is. If you know your ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, you're educated.
Right.
You know, I think everyone is educated, and we need to find out what people's goals are so we can help them learn more and get more educated,
Yep.
so that they can reach their full potential.
Yeah. Well, Marilyn, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with me today. I mean, it's going to help a lot of people. I know, just as a parent, again, navigating the parent space of having to have a child who has gone remote and now back in person, had services start because of the pandemic and because of access to resources. It's very helpful to know and be reassured that, you know, if teachers, and his teachers do care about him, then his needs will be met. And the prerequisite for good instruction is caring about your students. So thank you for that those affirming words, excuse me. I appreciate it very much.
You're welcome. My pleasure, Richard.
Thank you.